Okay, well, my name's Shaun. This is Dorothy.
I'm Dorothy.
We're going to be reviewing, talking about 1984. But before that, we're going to smoke the fuck up with some of this God Bud, which is completely legal in Canada.
Ever since, October 17th?
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fucking crazy.
We got this in the fucking mail. The postman delivered it
Yeah,
to our doorstep.
straight to the doorstep. And it smells dank as fuck. I'm going to tell you that much. It smells citrusy. It's pretty good. I'm ready for this. Alright, so how do you want to do this? Do you want to smoke like one each or share one? And then if we want the other one.
Let's share one.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because
what if it's like too much?
this is gonna be strong. So alright, we'll smoke and then we'll start talking about the book.
So what do you know about God Bud though?
I don't know anything about God Bud. This is like a completely new strain to me.
It's like a mixture of different things.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid indica apparently, and it's supposed to be pretty strong. Alright, I'm gonna start up.
Retails for how much?
It's like, I don't even remember. It's like $9 a gram.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I mean, that's tax too and all, so.
Yeah. Alright.
First
There
impressions.
you go. I'm liking it so far, you know? I like the taste. Alright, so basically, 1984. I mean, we all know the story of 1984 for the most part. It's like this dude in a dystopian-ass universe where you're being watched all the fucking time. And like people always talk about it because it's pretty legit to what's happening now. You know, a lot of these things of hyper surveillance and like, you know, for example with China and their whole like citizen score thing, that's gonna be a thing. That's very 1984. But anyway, the protagonist Winston and all that kind of shit. And this book does not have a good ending.
That's not a spoiler because you should know that by now.
Because you should definitely know 1984 by now. This is good. I'm liking this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty light drag. It's not like super.
I agree. Shit. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the opening. So first off, I think that 1984 has kind of a misplaced opening.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I think the first paragraph, I don't really like the first paragraph that much.
Read it for us.
Okay, so the first paragraph goes, "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him." See, I feel like that's really well written, first off, but I think that it doesn't really establish the opening as well as the fucking second paragraph. Imagine if it started straight away like this. The hallway smelt of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. At one end of it, a colored poster, too large for indoor display, had been tacked to the wall. It depicted simply an enormous face, more than a meter wide, the face of a man of about 45. With a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features. Winston made for the stairs. It was no use trying the lift. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working, and at present, the electric current was cut off during daylight hours. It was part of the economy drive in preparation for Hate Week. And I think that establishes things in a more, in a more interesting and present way.
True. I don't know. I like the way it currently is because I think in the first place when a novel, particularly a novel as heavy in theme and in emotion as 1984, whenever it starts, I think it benefits from starting kind of short.
Yeah.
Right? And if it had started with that second paragraph, that would be pretty long, but it would also include some themes that are completely alien, right? So
yeah.
Hate Week, for instance, we kind of start off not knowing what that was. Whereas the original ending, it starts off a bit more short, a bit more succinct, a little bit more, I would say, predictable and usual and typical. But then there's like a weird, uncanny sort of like disturbing feeling with the clock strikes 13 and the Victory Mansions thing. and it seems familiar yet weird at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a warning, like shit's about to get fucky.
Okay, yeah.
You know?
Okay, I didn't even realize. I did not realize that it was written this. The clocks are striking 13.
Oh.
Is that so? That's the number 13. I thought that was like 1, or is that like actually the number 13?
Yeah, I think it sort of in my head at least, it sort of establishes this weird world
Right.
where analog clocks
Okay.
go by international time,
Yeah.
and that's not something that's typical or usual in our world. So we're like, okay, this is a different world.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. No, I really like that. Yeah. No, you've definitely given a good argument. I'm gonna think about that shit. Okay. So, another fucking crazy thing that I think is in this book is the hate. And, like, I feel like no one really talks about this when they're talking about 1984, but it's... Yeah, it does taste good as fuck. I gotta say that much. They don't talk about the hate in 1984, but I think it's really interesting, because it's literally this whole event that the whole country is basically like hate for a certain amount of time, and people just lose their shit. And it's really interesting because George Orwell himself, George Orwell doesn't write his protagonist to be higher than it. Like, Winston, like, knows that the hate is fucking crazy, and he knows that it's a way for them to manipulate him, but he can't stop himself from, like, freaking out. And it was like, listen to this. People go insane. Like, behind him, it says, the dark-haired girl behind Winston had begun crying out, "Swine! Swine! Swine!" And suddenly she picked up a heavy newspaper dictionary and flung it at the screen. It struck Goldstein's nose and bounced off. The voice continued inexorably. In a lucid moment, Winston found that he was shouting of the others and kicking his heel violently against the rung of his chair. And it's like, yeah, I feel like a lot of people think of 1984 and they just imagine, like, screens watching them. But it goes way more than that. It's like, emotionally, you're like, so programmed that even people that are aware of it can't stop themselves.
Right, so people often cite 1984 as, like, like a vision of a dystopic future, right? And I think a lot of this dystopia is tied down to its parallels to the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. So about authoritarianism, about big brotherism, political and social sort of conservatism, extreme conservatism, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And they talk about that, and they also talk about the surveillance state and things like that. Mm-hmm. They parallel it directly to the Soviet Union, and they miss, I think, certain things that are more universal.
Right.
Like the hate. Okay, when we think about a dystopian future, we can think of it as perhaps, either an authoritarian state, or you get more specific, like a fascist state. Mm-hmm. And what else is, more towards, like, that makes the core of a fascist state than hate? And we see this happening right now. Yeah. But we think 1984 is not us because we don't have that very specific sort of like Soviet-esque kind of authoritarianism. But I think it all starts with hate. Yeah. No, that's so true. That's so true. That's so interesting. Yeah, and I think it's particularly interesting that on page 17, he even points out that it was even possible at moments to switch one's hatred this way or that by a voluntary act. Which means that, like, the people understand that this is kind of, like, there's no rhyme or reason to this. Yeah. They're just like, I'm going to hate this because it's necessary for me to hate. But I don't really care what it is I'm exactly hating. And yet, and this is, like, basically a really condensed version of what people do now, I feel like. Like, it's so easy for someone to just switch their enemy, or, like, the enemy that they have in their minds. Like, I don't know, really, like, ultra-conservatism as an example, like, I don't know, people who watch Fox News. Yeah. Yeah. Like, out of nowhere, suddenly, this is the next thing they hate, and I'm just gonna follow it because it's what I'm told. Yeah. I think what really rings true is what you said, like it's not important who they hate, they just know that it's important that it's necessary to hate. Yeah. And I find it very interesting that we live in a society where some people feel they have to hate something. Right. Like what drives that, I feel like in 1984, it's like they have hate week and stuff like that because, first of all, it's propaganda.
Yeah.
But also that it sort of distracts the populace and keeps them content by having them do this one very routine, like very, you know, sort of the one way they can like express themselves almost. And but that's the world of 1984, and in the world that we have right now, where it's almost it doesn't really make sense in terms of things you can gain from hating.
Right.
Why do people still feel like it's necessary to hate?
Man. Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah, it sucks, right? Because it makes you wonder, like, is it just human condition? Like, are we more preconditioned to hate or to love?
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think Orwell definitely does ask that question with this, because he's like, you know, because especially by the end of the book, right? It shows like what at some point the state will always be able to break down even your most natural instincts. I feel like. But anyway.
No, I want to work on that because.
Oh yeah.
You know, this is a society where people feel like it's necessary and normal to hate, but it's also a society in which Winston found, you know, love.
True.
An emotion other than, maybe it's not necessarily love, but it was an emotion other than hate.
Right.
But by the end of it, he sort of gets broken down and he sort of reassimilates into this 1984 society.
Right.
So I think, if anything, George Orwell is trying to say that as human beings, it's not that we're more preconditioned to do one thing or the other.
Right.
We have the capability to love and hate. It's just that to love is so much harder, and you need to fight for it so much harder, because once you become complacent or things are just too stacked against you, the bad side, the hateful side, so easily wins out.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense, and I feel like it's even a statement to the fact that Winston does love in the first place. That no matter how hard a state can work to break these things down, it's impossible to stop them from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. Okay, the next thing I wanted to point out, shit, I got notes here because I'm high, but I still want to make some good fucking points, you know? Okay, I'm kind of curious about this because I watched one 1984 analysis. A 1984 analysis on 1984, and the guy, is his name John Green? No, it's his brother. Hank Green.
Oh.
Right. Hank Green was like, yeah, I guess it was kind of the author, you know, having his own, like inserting himself in the story in a way, because there's that scene where Julia, his lover, like they fuck as a form of protest, right? But it's like Julia is this really beautiful woman, and Winston is an old man, or like not an old man, but like a middle-aged person.
Yeah, he's played by William Hurt in the movie. I think his name is William Hurt in the movie adaptation of this. John Hurt. John Hurt, yeah.
Right.
And John Hurt is not known as your typical hunk.
Yeah. And like, you know, and Orwell, when writing this, was kind of like a middle-aged man. So was he like inserting himself in here a little bit?
Yeah, I always did wonder why Julia have to be. I mean, he doesn't idealize her appearance,
right,
in a way that a lot of books make the mistake of doing. But she's certainly, I would think, more attractive.
No,
Winston.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't know. It's interesting. Is it really the author putting himself in? Totally could be. I feel like.
Do you think that's escapable though? Like, okay, as a straight male writer, when you're writing female characters, do you think you can really escape from wanting your female characters to be attractive because you like attractive people too?
Shit, yeah.
You know, like, is it really something we can escape from? Like, I'm trying to think, you know, as a woman, do I write my men in an idealized manner just because that's what I would like, you know?
Okay, no, I definitely don't. I think it is escapable, in my opinion. Because like when I write everybody kind of ugly, in general.
But okay, let's say you have to write a sex scene. Right?
Okay.
And I think especially when you're writing a sex scene, it's a little bit hard to divorce unless it's a gross sex scene. A bad sex scene. But this is just a typical sex scene.
Right.
And when you're you're writing it, wouldn't you want to sort of be able to write it in a way that you can relate to, because this
Right.
is ultimately your sex scene.
No, that's very true.
And then, I mean, maybe he's idealizing maybe Julia is not objectively attractive, but he's idealizing her because to him she's attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, this is the first person in his life, I guess, that... Because his wife, it's written that, like, his wife is basically a sexless person. Right? His wife, in the story, is, like, she views sex as, like, a necessary act to try and have kids. And she does not enjoy it at all. And that's why Winston hates her, because, like, she has no passion in the sex itself or in her body. So, yeah, I guess the fact that... I have no idea where I was going with this. I guess the fact that... I don't know. I guess the fact that, like, Julia's body is... She's more in control of her body, of her own agency as a person compared to his wife. I don't know. I guess that explains more of, like, the passion in their protest.
Yeah.
In a way, I guess.
You know, I find it interesting, like, this sort of state influenced perspective of sex, where everyone is very... There's a modesty culture of it. There's also, like, a procreation culture to it.
Right.
And I see this even in people that we know right now.
Really?
Like certain, especially women from more conservative backgrounds, I feel like there may be a tendency to be like, I don't actually enjoy sex, I gotta do it because I gotta have kids. Dang. And they have a more like Puritan... Maybe Winston's wife doesn't hate sex, she just thinks she has to hate sex.
And that's what the party would want too. Yeah. She's so following in the footsteps of the party.
Yeah, and I'm feeling like I know a lot of women who like they feel like they have to pretend they're not horny all the time. They feel like they have to pretend they're such like pure people, and then they're like, oh, I'm gonna go have sex because like it's necessary, or stuff like that. Where people grow up in a culture of like shame, where your body is shamed, your sexuality is shamed, that you don't really want to have anything to do with sex anymore. You're not asexual, which is something that you can't really control that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's people who... Yeah, because like it's definitely more a culture of repression rather than asexuality. Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, and this is like extreme heartland repression. What we have is like soft repression. And who stands to gain anything from this repression, right? No, exactly. Except for the state. Yeah. Or who are these people who benefit from us not utilizing sex to its like beautiful purposes? No, exactly. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna cut it here real quick. Dude, this Godbot is good as fuck. Yeah, I'm really hungry. I'm liking it. So, here's another thing that I wanted to point out. I thought it was genius of Orwell. I thought this was huge genius move. Like, goddamn, when he did this storyline wise. Because at the very start, this Julia, he sees her with paranoia. The whole time in the narrative voice, there's this huge sense of paranoia that's coming from Julia. In fact, he has this like, during the hate, he has this intense fantasy to want to kill her, to like brutalize her in the worst way possible. And that's really interesting to me because then like, as a reader, you're like subconsciously like inured to that, right? You're like, shit, I do need to be careful of this Julia. And then she like slips past him and like he's like, oh shit, are you okay? There's a short moment of contact where she slips him a note, and when you open it, it's this. It says, I love you. Fucking I love you. You're kidding me. I was like, that's fucking huge. That's such a big ass plot twist. This whole time you've been led to believe that this person is an enemy. And then, wow, I think Orwell just does these twists so fucking good. Yeah, it's a complete opposite of a lot of shitty things that writers or screenwriters do today, where, like, the romance is... They don't build up the romance at all, and then they fall in love. It's almost the same thing, because here, there's no romance that was built up, and now she loves him. But in this context, it's a really good thing. Yeah. Whereas in the other context, it's like, I don't give a fuck about your romance. Yeah, no, because it's so interesting, because love is not just that emotion in this book, because love is literally rebellion in this context.
and like, whoa, this is just powerful, you know, because it's like she's using her ability to love someone else as a way of rebelling against something that just cannot change, or like where they are at cannot be changed, and I think that's so interesting. Yeah, I just really wanted to point that out.
I never realized when I was first reading this book. I
Yeah.
never realized how big that moment was.
Oh yeah,
You know, I didn't like sit in it for a bit.
yeah,
I was reading and I was like, I love you. And I was like, oh shit.
yeah,
And then I just kept reading.
Yeah.
It didn't register in my mind at the time, like, oh, this is huge.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. I think. Yeah, Orwell. Okay, people say that Orwell doesn't write with emotion, but I definitely disagree with that. There's a fuck ton of emotion in this book. It's more than just more communism and fascism.
It's about, and you know, if you really like, rather than zoom in, you zoom out.
Mm-hmm.
It's about human nature
Yeah,
and control.
yeah,
Human nature versus
true.
repression, control, oppression. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very interesting though. Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, this is big. Okay, so page 180. So, do you remember the guy that helps them, O'Brien?
Ugh,
Fucking O'Brien.
fucking O'Brien.
Fucking O'Brien, the person that you did not expect ever. So they thought he was he was like in cahoots with them, that he was part of the rebellion. And they were like, fuck yeah, finally. Meet in his house. And he does the whole thing where he's like, okay, you need to swear on this. Are you prepared to commit murder? And they have to say yes. You know, so they basically confess to all their crimes. And it's so interesting where they're saying yes to everything that he's saying. He's like, you're prepared to lose your identity and live out the rest of your life as a waiter or a dock worker? Yes. You're prepared to commit suicide if and when we order you to do so? Yes. If you're prepared, the two of you, to separate and never see one another again? No, broke in Julia. It appeared to Winston that a long time passed before he answered. For a moment he seemed even to have been deprived of the power of speech. His tongue worked soundlessly, forming the opening syllables first of one word, then of the other, over and over again, until he had said it. He did not know which word he was going to say. No, he said finally. You did well to tell me, said O'Brien. It is necessary for us to know everything. So I think that's really interesting that Julia is willing to do all this shit for the rebellion except for leave Winston. And that's how profound their love is to her. That this is a bigger rebellion than any of these other things. Right? That this is a statement of rebellion that is stronger even than killing a man.
That's so crazy because it puts the book in a whole new light for me.
Oh yeah?
It's always dystopic fiction, literary fiction, but in some weird way, this is a romance novel.
This is a romance novel, but
it's a really good romance novel.
It's like a romance novel. Yeah, no, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, but I think the reason why it transcends the romance novel is because this is a romance that's tied to literally survival. You know?
The most romantic thing
you
could possibly think of.
Exactly. Fucking George Orwell.
It's so romantic. Love is the most important thing to me over getting a new and better government, over reforming the state, over my human rights. Love is that's the most romantic trope.
Yeah, but it's done so well, I think, because it's like, yeah, you get their struggle, because you're like, they're being so happy in spite of the government's attempts to pretty much remove all form of emotion except for anger. And here they are thwarting that,
George Orwell was a sap. Oh my God.
Yeah, he was so sappy, but it's so good. But yeah, I think that's so interesting, right?
That is the biggest thing for me right now.
Really?
1984 is a romance novel.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's why I think this book is genius, because it like lays all this shit down while still being so emotionally strong. Anyway. Okay, here's another interesting one to me, right? It's Goldstein's fucking book. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, Goldstein is the guy that is supposed to be the head of the rebellion, but no one even knows if he's real or not, because who knows in this land? So, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism by Emmanuel Goldstein. So, I think Orwell does this is pretty experimental, in my opinion, for a writer to do. Because literally what he does is that he's inserted another character's book into his book, and this book pretty much explains the entire theory behind 1984 and the universe that it surrounds it, right? And I'm wondering, is that a lazy technique? Do you think? Because this is literally the opposite of show don't tell, right? This is literally Orwell being like, let me tell you exactly what the rules of this universe are.
And then he follows it by laying out the actual rules?
Yeah, he like it goes into like, as an example, Chapter 1, Ignorance is Strength. Throughout recorded time and probably since the end of the Neolithic age, there have been three kinds of people in the world. The high, the middle, and the low. They have been subdivided in many ways. But this is pretty true to real life. Like, he's mirrored this as close to, like, real life subdivisions and class systems as possible.
You know, I think, interesting you brought up show don't tell, but now I'm starting to question, what is the purpose of this book in this book? Do you know what I'm saying? What is the purpose of Emmanuel Goldstein's book in this book? Because it's not like it's that we needed to read all that to be able to infer that 1984 is a world in which this particular thing happens. That, you know, ignorance can become strength. That war can become love. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I totally
so
think that.
So why does he actually include this book in here and specifically, you know, actually lay down its... with the contents of this book? Do you think maybe he was just sort of being kind of like self-indulgent, and he was like writing this world already, and he was like, you know, it'd be really cool if I actually wrote down the rules somewhere.
Right, yeah.
But did we actually need to see this part? Like, I get why the book exists, but why did we need to see the contents? Because we kind of already know this is the world.
Yeah, no, I guess so. I guess it was... I liked it, personally. Well, I did find it to be a bit thick at some points.
I'll be real with you. I wouldn't dislike it even if I found out he did it. Like, let's say I could determine conclusively that he did it as a self-indulgent thing. I wouldn't even hate it.
Yeah.
That's what's so cool about this thing. That it's completely unnecessary. Seems pretty self-indulgent.
Right, but I fucking love that shit.
But it took me in. I was sold, you know?
I think he has a good writing style in general. And obviously, smoke as much or as little as you want.
Yeah.
You know?
No, or he's such a good writer that the world is so compelling that, you know what? I want to read, like, one of its, like, you know...
Right, it's...
something academic.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so academic. I guess because it's so present in our world too, right? He really did write this to be so parallel to what's happening in our world.
Yeah, to show us the sort of linguistically,
the
similarities.
Yeah. Anyway, so on page 209, I thought this was really interesting. Throughout recorded time, and this is from Goldstein's book still. Throughout recorded time, and probably since the end of the Neolithic age, there have been three kinds of people in the world: the high, the middle, and the low. They have been subdivided in many ways. They have borne countless different names, and their relative numbers, as well as their attitude towards one another, have varied from age to age. But the essential structure of society has never altered. Even after enormous upheavals and seemingly irrevocable changes, the same pattern has always reasserted itself, just as a gyroscope will always return to equilibrium. However far it is pushed one way or the other. And that's really interesting to me, because that's real. That he's describing a real world phenomenon of class, in a very generalized way. But dang, I don't know, that I guess for me this book, why it was so important to me was because this was like literally the first the first time I read about class in the most concise way possible. You know, learn about class in a way that was like allegorical. But dang, I don't know. I think maybe this is what makes Goldstein's book important. Is that through this Orwell can legit lay down some real knowledge, even though it might not be necessary to the story itself.
You want to show people, you know, like,
Yeah.
this is the knowledge I gotta drop.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Still self-indulgent.
Still self-indulgent, but it did educate me on something that I was unaware of. Well, I was aware of in a very non-conscious way. Anyway, so a party member lives from birth to death under the eye of the thought police. Even when he is alone, he can never be sure that he is alone. Wherever he may be, asleep or awake, working or resting in his bath or in bed, he can be inspected without warning and without knowing that he is being inspected. And that's freaky to me because we're really close to a reality like this now. Like, Orwell lived before the age of the internet. And before even the age of... I forget when exactly he died, but I don't think mass communications was really a thing. But yet he predicted this shit down to an uncanny level. And I'm like... I mean, this is such a reality, especially for a place like with China's... I forget what it was called.
Social
ranking.
Yeah.
Where computers are literally recognizing faces.
Yeah.
And like, shit.
Yeah, I think in that literal sense, it's really interesting just like how Nostradamus he was, you know?
Yeah.
Like how prophetic. But I think on a figurative level too, that's a very interesting like parable to describe the human insecurity of always feeling like we're watched.
Shit.
On a more psychological level.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I go to sleep thinking I'm being watched too.
Yeah.
And we're always self-conscious, we're always insecure, and that's the own repression that we enact against ourselves. If we were less self-conscious, imagine all the things that we do, all the emotions that we express, all the love that we would give, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, literally, and both literally and figuratively, that's like, he's got huge ideas, dude.
Yeah.
He's got massive ideas.
This is pretty fucking crazy.
He's I think beyond a literary genius, also like a genius.
Yeah, just a straight up genius.
Philosophy wise.
Yeah, he really brings it down in such a strong way. And yeah, I don't know. I just really liked reading this because it was like, this is such a warning, you know, that. So yeah, China has this social ranking thing, but that doesn't mean that he has, you know, all this other terrible stuff, right? But then you think about it and you're like, really, we're so close. You know, does it start with this before turning into other stuff? You know, it's definitely a warning that you never know what people can do.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, right? Because, like, again, like I said, it's like super compared with the Soviet Union.
Right.
And in the Soviet, in like a socialist, communistic kind of, or like in a historical, traditional kind of surveillance state, it's them literally impose, like, forcing the surveillance on you and being like, here's an actual camera watching you. But in this world, which is the opposite of that super authoritarian socialist world, this is a capitalistic world. It's generally a free world.
Right.
We are volunteering to be surveilled. It's a surveillance that we want. You know, they're selling us these great products and we're buying it knowing that there's a chance we could get surveilled, and we're like, yes.
Yeah.
We're choosing for it to happen. So it's like two different types of surveillance states, you know? One where it's very overt and forced, and one where it's very like
chosen, almost.
Yeah, covert, chosen. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. And here's another part that I think is really fucking interesting too. On page 223 is well, the idea of doublethink has been explored earlier in the book, but I think this is where it really comes to its head. 223. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. To tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them. To forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then when it becomes necessary again, to draw it back from oblivion for just so long as it is needed. To deny the existence of objective reality, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. All this is indispensably necessary. Ultimately, it is by means of doublethink that the party has been able and may, for all we know, continue to be able for thousands of years to arrest the course of history.
That is so great. The first time I read that, it was very solemn. I was very serious. I was like, holy shit, doublethink.
Yeah.
Now that I read it, it reads like satire. It reads comedic, funny. Like George Orwell was taking this opportunity to kind of like poke fun at people that he disagreed with politically, being like, these motherfuckers legit just ignore reality because that's the kind of assholes that they are.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, this is so great.
Exactly. And it's so interesting, like, this happens all the time. Like, the idea, doublethink, we citizens, people everywhere do doublethink to stay comfortable, to stay complacent. Mm-hmm. People who don't believe in, like, climate change, as an example, that's an act of doublethink. To literally see your world and all these hurricanes happening, and then to consciously go, I don't believe that. Yeah,
or to just continue being a misogynist.
Right.
To actually be the one committing the misogyny but refusing to believe misogyny exists. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a doublethink that most misogynists do not believe misogyny.
Or people that are like, the victims of school shootings are just crisis actors. Mm. That's doublethink. It's to see facts in front of your face and to say, I don't believe that. And then to actually, to the core of your being, actually believe that. And I think, damn, I got
in case you haven't realized, we're a bunch of fucking liberal hippies.
Dude, no doubt about that. Fucking smoking weed? You're kidding me. Okay. Oh, shit. Now, this is the part that fucked me up.
You say that at every part.
I know. Hold up a sec. I'm gonna light this up real quick.
I wish we had some Coke.
The drink. Alright. So, this fucked me up so hard. This is when they got caught.
Oh.
So fucked up, man. Okay.
Yeah, that fucked me up.
That fucked me up so hard because I was like, they're gonna get away with this. They're gonna join the rebellion.
No, and you know what fucked me up? Ryan's face reveal.
Fuck. Yeah, no, it was so intense. Okay, but here it is. And here's what makes this so beautiful in a writing narrative way too. So before they got caught, there's this section. It goes, the birds sang, the proles sang, the party did not sing. All around the world, in London and New York, in Africa and Brazil, and in the mysterious, forbidden lands beyond the frontiers, in the streets of Paris and Berlin, in the villages of the endless Russian plain, in the bazaars of China and Japan, everywhere stood the same solid, unconquerable figure, made monstrous by work and childbearing, toiling from birth to earth and still singing. Out of those mighty loins a race of conscious beings must one day come. You were the dead, theirs was the future, but you could share in that future if you kept alive the mind as they kept alive the body, and passed on the secret doctrine that 2 + 2 make 4. We are the dead, he said. We are the dead, echoed Julia dutifully. And then, you are the dead, said an iron voice behind them. And at first you're like, what the fuck? Who is that? And then you're like, they sprang apart. Winston's entrails seemed to have turned into ice. He could see the white all around the irises of Julia's eyes. Her face had turned a milky yellow. The smear of rouge that was still on each cheekbone stood out sharply, almost as though unconnected with the skin beneath. You are the dead, repeated the iron voice. It was behind the picture, breathed Julia. It was behind the picture, said the voice. Remain exactly where you are. Make no movement until you are ordered. Isn't that amazing? Like, literally, Orwell goes into, like, the most beautiful lyrical writing in a paragraph just before they get caught. To give the reader a sense of hope, and a true sense of hope at that. Because he's literally saying that no matter what, the truth will prevail. Right? No matter what, people will have the basic understanding that 2 + 2 = 4. And this is a truth that will never end. And right after that, they fucking get captured. Where's the lighter at?
I just want to say that this smell is becoming more and more familiar. It's like a Chinese fruit or like a flower.
So what was I saying?
It's like a peach or a plum.
Fuck, yeah. Because apparently there's a strain from Hawaii. Dang, I hope the smoke's not leaving this room. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, so they give you this hope, right? That fuck, the truth will prevail. That's never gonna end, and we can always be happy about that. And then it was behind the picture the whole time. And it's Orwell. It's this is so interesting to me because this is basically Orwell going like, only as a collective, keep holding on to the truth can things change. But as an individual, the state will always find you and it will always bring you down. Because individuals will never be able to change the world on their own. You know? It's like saying literally that like only through civilization, like not civilizations, like through groups of people working together is that the only way that anything's ever gonna change. Whereas as an individual you can do as much as you can try, but nothing will ever happen. But,
I find that I have a problem with 1984. You see, in this world, in order for this world to exist, there need to be collaborators.
Right.
Right? There need to be thought police, like people actually going around being like, this man just said this in his sleep. I'm going to ruin his life now.
Right.
I'm going to destroy this man. In 1984, I don't understand why people would be on the side of this government.
Right.
Why anyone at all is getting into this and being like, yes. Whereas in our world, I feel like sort of even the bad guys are humanized in a way where you can explain their bad decisions. Like, okay, he wants to have a fascist state because he's a racist. He hates people who are not like him. He's a racist. But there's no race in 1984. It's like a post-racial world.
Right.
It's also slightly post-gender in its own weird way.
Yeah, right.
Why would anyone collaborate with this terrible state of living?
You know.
Is it purely just for wealth? What use is wealth if you live in... You know, am I... Okay, I guess, are we meant to assume that everything that people like Winston and Julia are not allowed to do, like enjoy things, you know, watch different types of movies, you know, get, you know, sex for enjoyment and fun. Are we supposed to believe that? Are we meant to assume that the people higher up are allowed to do this?
Right.
If they're also not allowed to do these things, who in their right mind would want to, like...
That's true. Okay, it does describe... I remember at one point where they're like, the higher-ups get things like good coffee and sugar and stuff like that. So maybe the higher-ups do get to do all these things.
But why the need to oppress?
I don't know. I guess maybe when people know or understand, because these people are literally like basically in ignorance of what they don't have. You can't rebel if you are ignorant of what you don't even have. Right?
But I don't know. Do you find the bad guys?
Yeah.
In 1984, a bit unhumanized.
Yeah, no, they're definitely like a machine.
Yeah, and I don't find that realistic.
Yeah, no, you're right. They don't have human flaws. The bad guys in this don't have human flaws.
Yeah, they're bad, almost as if just because.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. I agree with that. That's a very good point. I think a good criticism. Yeah, because it definitely starts to feel a bit like they're bad because that's what bad guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I understand. I guess this is Orwell saying like, this is an extreme. And there are many shades of extremism. You know, this is at the very last end of it. but remember where we could be. You know. Yeah, on page 290, I thought this was really interesting. It's when Winston is fine, like he's brainwashed.
I don't notice any left.
Yeah, looks like it's just about done. Probably one more pop. I'm not gonna read this the part in 290 yet, but basically, I don't know. I thought it was really interesting how the party knew Winston's deepest fear, which is how they got him, right? Because at first he was like, they tortured him for days on end. And really, okay, Orwell must have had a sick fucking mind to make this torture scene, by the way, because I've literally never read a torture scene like it in my entire life before. Because it's literally the most like emotional form of torture that I've ever read. Where like, yeah, I don't know, and yeah, I was like, dang, this is intense because the party at the very end, they don't even just make him say that he renounces his rebellion. They literally break him as a human being into believing them. Like it's literally complete assimilation of his brain. Because they're not even content with being like, okay, he's saying this stuff now, but we know he's still thinking it. They're like, he will never think otherwise ever again. And that's intense because I feel like it's totally possible.
Yeah, with all kinds of in all forms of internalized oppression, I think.
Right.
That's breaking someone into believing that they're lesser.
Yeah, they're really interesting. And yeah, on like 290, at the end of all of it, he's like, he accepted everything. The past was alterable. The past never had been altered. Oceania was at war with East Asia. Oceania had always been at war with East Asia. That's crazy. And yeah, that's pretty much all the notes I have. But yeah, I don't know. I thought this book just had such a sad ending too. Literally, like, that you see Julia is the exact same. You know?
Yeah.
Like, Julia has also renounced everything, and it's like, fuck. And it's just depressing. But by the end of the book, it's interesting. Okay, so it has a sad ending for our characters, but it has a hopeful ending for the future, though. Because at the very end of the book, I remember reading that the party was destroyed.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's in here. Because it's talking in the appendix. It says Newspeak was the official language of Oceania and had been devised to meet the ideological needs of INGSOC, or English Socialism. In the year 1984, there was not as yet anyone who used Newspeak as his sole means of communication, either in speech or writing. The leading articles in the Times were written in it, but this was a tour de force which could only be carried out by a specialist. So this is talking about Newspeak and all this stuff as history, implying that society has rebelled and Newspeak and all that is gone. Did you not know this?
I always thought that it was when by the time we hit this part, the story has now ended, and it's George Orwell now explaining to us in a pseudo-fictional way. Like, okay, so there's this thing that happened, it was called Newspeak. You don't know what happened, maybe the whole thing got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, it's fake.
Right. Well, I don't know.
What am I trying to say?
So you're basically thinking that this was just a non-canon thing.
Yeah, no, I thought it was we're not part of the story anymore. We've entered, we've come back to reality. Right. But actually, you think it's part of the...
I think it's a part of the novel.
It's a part of the story.
Because it says Newspeak was... It is not saying in 1984,
it's talking about this as if it's real.
As if it's real, yeah. Which is why I'm saying it's part of the narrative. Dude, I fucking got you. So yeah.
No. Okay. Yeah. Damn. it says a lot of about how like the structure informs the story. Like
Right.
literally, because you think a book ends when the page is turned, and the next thing has a different title on top. It says appendix.
Right.
It's ended.
Yeah. Yeah, but so I think that this is a part of the story because like
it's so cool because like when you're reading Lord of the Rings, for instance, it has the appendix at the back, and it talks about what how to speak these languages and what the rune for this was. And I usually read it like that's the appendix. Okay, so this is I knew it was fictional, but I didn't take a second to think like, yo, this is part of the story.
Yeah.
It's almost as if like J.R.R. Tolkien is a historian of the Middle Earth.
Yo, shit.
And he writes the story, and then he says, in Middle Earth, these were like it actually fucking. You either believe this shit fucking existed, or you realize and come to terms with the fact that the appendixes.
Yeah. No, but I love it.
Why did I never think of this? It was never taught to me when we were studying a novel.
Oh yeah? Shit. No, like I mean, it makes sense, right? I don't know. I like that.
I love books, dude.
Yeah, me too. Books are fucking amazing. I love it. All right, yeah. That's all we have. Thanks for watching.